In the archives of the Dutch West India Company, a single entry in the ship's log of Admiral Jacob Roggeveen, dated April 5, 1722, marks a rupture in history. On that day, Easter Sunday, his three ships, De Afrikaanse Galie, De Thienhoven, and De Arend, were navigating the immense featureless blue of the South Pacific when they stumbled upon a tiny, isolated speck of land that appeared on no known chart. In honor of the day, he christened it Posh Island, Easter Island. But what he and his crew, weary from their long and arduous voyage, witnessed on its shores defied all logic and human experience. The island itself was a near-barren volcanic landscape, a stark triangle of scorched grass and sparse, low-lying scrub. Roggeveen noted in his journal the complete absence of any tall, mature trees. There was no timber to fashion a ship's mast, a beam for a house, or even a solid plank for a seaworthy boat. Before we dive in, just a quick reminder that a simple like and subscribe is the best way to support the channel. Thank you so much for being here. The inhabitants, a few thousand people who crowded the shores to observe the strange floating fortresses of the newcomers, appeared emaciated and desperate. Their bodies were covered in intricate tattoos, and their only vessels were frail, flimsy canoes, stitched together from small, scavenged pieces of wood, utterly incapable of surviving the thousands of kilometers of open ocean separating them from the nearest inhabited landmass. And yet, scattered across this desolate, impoverished landscape, stood they. Hundreds of them. Colossal stone statues, some towering as high as a four-story building and weighing dozens of tons, stared inland. Many balanced enormous multi-ton stone hats of red rock upon their heads. They were arranged on massive stone platforms, their elongated faces and deeply recessed eye sockets, which once held staring eyes of coral and obsidian, guarding a millennia-old silence. Roggeveen was baffled. In his log, he recorded his profound bewilderment. We could not comprehend how it was possible that these people, who are devoid of heavy, thick timber for making any machines, as well as strong ropes, had been able to erect such images, which were fully 30 feet high. That question, posed by the Dutch admiral 300 years ago, became the genesis of one of the greatest and most enduring enigmas in human history, the paradox of Rapa Nui. For decades, we believed we had found the answer. We constructed a convenient, simple, and deeply moralistic theory about a society that, blinded by interclan rivalry and obsessive religious fervor, engineered its own destruction. It was the ultimate parable of ecocide, a story in which the islanders, in their maniacal quest to build and transport their statues, felled the very last tree. With their ecosystem destroyed, their civilization, we were told, collapsed into a nightmare of starvation, brutal warfare, and cannibalism. It is a beautiful, tragic story, a cautionary tale that resonates perfectly with our own modern anxieties about climate change and resource depletion. But what if that entire story is a lie? What if the comfortable narrative of self-destruction is nothing but a projection of our own fears, a simplistic explanation for a mystery that is far more complex, technological, and immeasurably more terrifying? Recent discoveries, born from technologies like ground-penetrating radar, forensic acoustic analysis, and advanced genetic sequencing, do not just challenge the old ecocide theory, they utterly annihilate it. And from its smoking ruins, a new, chilling picture emerges. A picture where the iconic statues, the Moai, are not just monuments to ancestors, they are something else. They are locks on a series of hatches. A picture where the entire island is not the graveyard of a failed civilization, but a meticulously engineered prison. The question is no longer how they built them. The question is what they were so desperately trying to lock inside. Before we descend into that darkness, we must first dismantle the old lie. The theory of ecocidal collapse, popularized by scientist Jared Diamond in his book Collapse, was built on a simple premise. The islanders needed trees, specifically the giant Rapa Nui palm, to create sleds, levers, and rollers to transport the massive Moai. Their obsession, the theory goes, led them to clear-cut the entire island, an act of supreme environmental folly. But in 2011, American archaeologists Carl Lipo and Terry Hunt conducted a revolutionary experiment. Working with the oral traditions of the modern Rapa Nui people, which always insisted the Moai walked, neke neke, They proved the ecocide theory's central premise was false. Using only 3 strong ropes and a team of just 18 people, they created a precise 5-ton replica of a Moai. By wrapping the ropes around the head and rocking the statue from side to side, using its ingeniously designed forward-tilting center of mass, they made the statue walk. It shimmied forward, step by step, just as the legends described. This single experiment proved that massive log rollers and timber sleds were never necessary. The statues could be moved with minimal resources and clever engineering. This immediately shattered the statues for trees hypothesis. So, what did happen to the trees? The same meticulous science that exonerated the Rapa Nui of their greatest alleged crime pointed to a different culprit, one that arrived with them in their very first canoes, the Polynesian rat, Rattus exulans. New pollen and seed analysis from lakebed cores shows a different story. While the humans certainly cut down trees for firewood, canoes, and agriculture, it was a plague of rats with no natural predators that delivered the final blow. Their population exploded into the millions, and they consumed the seeds and nuts of the giant palm, Pascalococos disperta, completely preventing the forest from regenerating. The ecosystem was doomed, not by a religious mania, but by an invasive species. This discovery changes everything. It means the Rapa Nui were not fools who blindly destroyed their world. They were resilient survivors, adapting to a slowly changing rat-devastated environment for centuries. And if they weren't destroying their world, for the statues, it means the statues served a purpose so vital, so absolutely critical to their existence, that they continued their monumental work despite their dwindling resources. The Moai were not a luxury, they were a necessity. But this only deepens the mystery. If the culture was so stable and the engineering so efficient, why did it all end? The answer is not one of slow decline, but of a sudden, violent, and ideological rupture. To understand this, we must turn to the only surviving records, the oral histories of the Rapa Nui themselves. For centuries, they have passed down the story of a great war between 2 distinct peoples, 2 castes who inhabited the island, the Hanau Epe, the long ears, and the Hanau Momoko, the short ears. According to the legends, the Hanau Epe were the ruling elite, the descendants of the first mythical king, Hotu Matua. They were the architects, the priests, the holders of the sacred knowledge, or mana. They were named for their custom of elongating their earlobes with heavy ornaments. The Hanau Momoko, or short ears, were the working class, the laborers who, generation after generation, were tasked with the backbreaking work of carving and erecting the Moai. For centuries, this rigid hierarchy held. But as resources dwindled, tensions escalated into a brutal civil war. The legend describes the war's horrifying climax at the Poic Peninsula on the island's eastern cape. The last of the Hanau Ipe warriors, cornered and outnumbered, took refuge on the peninsula, which was defended by a massive, pre-existing ditch known as Ko Te Umu o Te Hanau Ipe, the oven of the long ears, or simply the Ipo Trench. The Hanau Momoko, anticipating a final desperate charge, filled the trench with dry brushwood and grass. When the long ears attacked under the cover of darkness, the trap was sprung. The trench was set ablaze, becoming a wall of fire. The legends claim every last Hanau Ipe male was either burned alive or forced into the flames, a genocidal event that effectively erased the island's entire ruling and priestly class. For decades, scholars dismissed this as folklore, a dramatic metaphor for class struggle. But archaeology, once again, proved the legends true. Excavations at the Ipo Trench, first by Thor Heyerdahl and later by others, unearthed exactly what the stories described: a thick, massive layer of charcoal. And mixed within that charcoal were the fragmentary, calcined, and shattered remains of human beings. Radiocarbon dating placed this mass immolation in the 17th century, precisely aligning with the time frame of the oral traditions. Recent genetic analysis of ancient remains from across the island has even suggested the presence of 2 genetically distinct populations, lending further credence to the story of 2 separate peoples. This was not a small skirmish. It was a revolution. It was the complete and violent overthrow of the island's entire social and religious order. and its consequences were immediate and catastrophic for the Moai. The victorious short ears, in an explosion of revolutionary furor or perhaps deep-seated terror, began the Huri Moai, the era of statue toppling. This was not random vandalism. It was a systematic, ritualistic execution. The victorious warriors would dig under the massive ahu, the platforms, pulling out foundation stones until the colossus became unstable. They would then pull it crashing down, face first, into the dirt. This was done, the legends say, to blind the statue, to stop it from watching the villages. They would then often break the statue's neck, its most vulnerable point, and smash its sacred coral eyes, the very objects believed to house and channel the divine mana. This was an act of deicide. The new rulers of Rapa Nui were not just rejecting their former masters, they were violently murdering their gods. But why? Why this sudden, obsessive need to destroy the very symbols their culture had spent a millennium creating? What had they been building that inspired such fear and hatred? To understand this, we must look at the factory itself. The quarry at Rano Raraku is a breathtaking alien landscape. It is not just a mountain, it was a divine factory, an idle production conveyor belt that ran for centuries. Nearly all of the 887 known Moai were carved from the unique compressed volcanic tuff of this single caldera. The material, while still stone, is just soft enough to be worked by the only tool the Rapa Nui possessed, the toki, a simple, handheld adze made of much harder basalt. Thousands of these toki have been found, worn down and discarded, at the quarry's base. Imagine the scene. Teams of master carvers, suspended by ropes on the sheer cliff faces, chipping away day after day, year after year, under a relentless sun. This was not crude labor. Laser scanning has revealed that the Moai's features, the fine, sharp nose, the thin, pursed lips, the elongated ears, are often perfectly symmetrical, suggesting standardized methods, templates, and a profound shared mastery of their craft. In the quarry today, 397 unfinished statues remain, frozen in every stage of creation, as if the workers simply dropped their tools mid-shift and fled. Some are mere outlines, ghosts in the rock. Others are fully carved, polished, and ready for transport, connected to the mother rock only by a thin keel along their spine. The largest, El Gigante, lies dormant, a 21.6-meter, 71-foot leviathan with an estimated weight of 270 tons. It is a monument to an ambition that knew no earthly bounds, and the engineering feats didn't stop there. On the heads of nearly 100 Moai, the Rapa Nui placed pukao, massive cylinders of red, scoriaceous rock, some weighing over 12 tons. These were quarried at a different volcano, Punapau, transported for kilometers, and then somehow raised and balanced on the heads of the 30-foot-tall statues. This was a civilization with a singular, all-consuming focus, a level of social organization, engineering skill, and devotion that rivals the building of the pyramids. And then, at the absolute height of their power and ambition, they stopped. The discovery of the Ipoh Trench Massacre gives us the who and the when, but not the why. Why did the short ears, after seizing power, not simply co-opt the statue building for their own glory? Why did they instead try to erase it? The answer, it seems, was not on the surface. It was beneath their feet. The revelation that the Moai had bodies buried up to their necks made global headlines in the 2010s. But this fact was always known to archaeologists. Wind and soil erosion had simply buried the statues at the Rano Raraku quarry. This, however, was a distraction. The real secret, hidden from plain sight, was what the ground-penetrating radar found next. In the last few years, international teams, armed with technology that can see through solid rock, began to scan the island. They started with the well-known network of natural lava tubes, volcanic caves used for shelter and secret ceremonies. But as they scanned the areas under the great Ahu platforms, their screens lit up with anomalies. The natural lava tubes they found had been modified. The GPR data, combined with seismic and magnetic surveys, revealed a vast, complex network of subterranean passages. Tunnels had been artificially widened and reinforced with intricate, mortarless stone walls. Natural chambers had been carved into perfect geometric shapes. Most chillingly, these tunnels appeared to connect the Ahu platforms to one another, creating a hidden island-wide system. The Moai were not just standing on platforms, they were standing guard over the entrances to an underworld. When excavation teams carefully descended into these newly discovered chambers, they found they were not tombs for venerated ancestors. They were sites of horrific, intense ritual activity. They found circles of obsidian figurines, remnants of massive fires, and human bones. But these were not respectful burials. The bones were smashed, splintered, and burned, scattered in chaos. Forensic analysis confirmed violent deaths, skulls crushed by blunt force, cut marks from obsidian knives on femurs and vertebrae. These were chambers of sacrifice, or execution. Chemical analysis of the soil in these sealed chambers revealed anomalous concentrations of phosphates, calcium, and other elements consistent with the decomposition of massive amounts of organic matter, far more than the few bones found could account for. Under one Ahu, a human jawbone was found fused into the rock itself, the surrounding basalt showing signs of having been subjected to intense, localized heat. After the bone was placed there, but the most disturbing discovery was not seen. It was felt. While mapping a deep passage beneath a cluster of statues, researchers deploying sensitive acoustic equipment detected a persistent low-frequency anomaly, a hum. It registered at the very edge of human hearing, in the infrasound range of 8 to 12 hertz. It was not mechanical and matched no known geological or seismic signature. Acoustic engineers brought in to analyze the data were baffled, describing it as structured, non-random, with quasi-periodic pulsations. It was a sound you couldn't hear, but it vibrated through the soles of your feet, in your chest cavity, in your bones. It induced a documented feeling of intense, inexplicable anxiety, disorientation, and dread in the research team. One technician described it as standing on the chest of a sleeping giant. The very chambers themselves seemed engineered for this, their porous, tough walls absorbing all echoes, creating a leaden, oppressive silence broken only by this impossible, resonant pulse. The legends, once again, took on a terrifying new light. The most esoteric Rapa Nui traditions, whispered only by the initiated, speak of the island's name, Te Pito o Te Henua, the navel of the world. They speak of the Moai being placed with their backs to the sea, not to watch over the villages, but to stare inland, to watch something inside the island, something that slept in the deep places and must not be awakened. What if this was not metaphor? What if the war between the long ears and short ears was not about land or labor, but about theology? A schism over how to manage what was below. Perhaps the long ears, the priests, believed they could control or harness this chthonic power, this hum, this mana from the earth itself. And perhaps the short ears, the laborers who worked closest to it, who dug the foundations and heard the whispers, came to fear it. All the evidence, the underground network, the sacrificial chambers, the genocidal war, the ritualistic blinding of the statues, the sudden abandonment of the quarry, and the inexplicable living hum, points to one terrifying and internally consistent hypothesis. The Moai were never just monuments. They were components in a vast technological or techno-magical system. They were seals. They were anchors. The Ahu were not platforms. They were containment caps. The entire island was a prison designed by the first settlers to contain an ancient, geophysical, or perhaps even sentient anomaly they had found there. In this chilling new narrative, the centuries of statue building were a desperate, multi-generational effort to maintain and strengthen the containment field. The Rapa Nui were not just honoring their ancestors, they were holding the line. The war, then, was a rebellion against a priesthood that had either failed in its duty or perhaps had become corrupted by the very power it was meant to guard. The Moai, the toppling, was not an act of victorious vandalism. It was a panicked, desperate attempt by the survivors to deactivate the system. They toppled the statues and smashed their eyes to break the connection, to shut down the conduits, terrified that the mana had been tainted, that the prison was failing, and its inmate was waking up. And the quarry? The tools dropped mid-swing, the 397 unfinished gods. That was not a population in slow decline. That was a population in flight. They abandoned their most sacred task, their work of millennia, because the fear of what they were doing had finally eclipsed the tradition of doing it. The Birdman cult, the Tangata Manu, which rose from the ashes of the Moai culture, was a post-apocalyptic religion, a frantic, desperate ritual of a traumatized people huddled on the cliffs of Orongo, turning their backs on the inland navel of their island and praying to the sky, because what lay beneath their feet had become the source of an ultimate, unnameable cosmic horror. A huge thank you to everyone who watched this video to the end. Your support, a like, and a subscription is very important to us. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can always stay up to date and never miss our new videos.